Welcome to the Love Irish Food Green Ireland podcast series, episode 3. I'm your host, Conall O Móráin. Love Irish Food is dedicated to sustainable and local Irish food and drinks brands, supporting the many thousands of local jobs and communities that depend on the Irish food industry. Visit loveirishfood.ie for a full list of your local brands. In this series, we'll be looking at topics affecting the Irish food industry, ranging from the shop local movement, funding, selling online, digital marketing, and so much more. We have exceptional food and drink talent lined up to give you their tips, insights and knowledge, all in a convenient-sized 30 minutes bite. On this episode, we're talking money, the lifeblood of business. I'm joined in studio by a real dragon. That's Alison Cowzer, one-time TV dragon and co-founder of the East Coast Bakehouse that she established with Michael Carey back in 2015. And I also have Gannon and Niall McGrath, who revolutionised the snacking market with their Fulfilled branded nutrition bars and who have now set off on another journey, this time with TV chef Donald Skehan and their Cali Cali brand. You're all very welcome.
Good to be here.
Nice and as I mentioned, the title or subtitle for this episode is Green for Growth, Investment and Growth in Ireland. I think the green, Alison, that they're talking about there is green of money. I don't think we have green money anymore, do we?
Actually, I think multicoloured money.
The idea of the green back.
Yeah. Just the 500.
I've never seen one of those.
You've got to hang out with Tom to get that.
Yeah. Well, what's cash now anyway?
Exactly.
So, funding for the food business, available or not?
I think it's changing all the time. I mean, in the last couple of weeks, we've seen yet another bank, KBC, about to exit the Irish market, hot on the heels of the Ulster Bank announcement. So in terms of traditional lending, it's really become incredibly concentrated. I suppose for food businesses, no more than other businesses at startup or growth phase or wherever you are in your need for funding. Traditionally, banks would have been the first go-to place where you would have, go in, make your presentation, and hope to get a good deal and a good interest rate. That's not going to be available for an awful lot of food companies now as the landscape changes. The concentration will, in my view, completely reduce competition, and I don't think that's a good sign for the Irish food business.
And for early stage or startup or even middle-aged food businesses, that doesn't augur very well either, because that means if they can't get to access to, as I mentioned, the lifeblood of business, the cash, others outside of this island may be able to muscle in on their markets.
Yeah, I mean, the Irish food industry is very broad. We've got startups, we've got micro businesses, and then we move on to SMEs and some of the larger global companies. But all of them need finance. They need cash to grow, firstly to be founded in the first place, but increasingly to grow. And the harder it is to find that finance, the harder it is to grow. So I think scale is going to become a huge issue for companies as they get to a point where, they may have a full order book, they may have really, really good prospects, but that, everybody knows growth eats cash. So where do you find it? So as the banks reduce their capacity and their ability and their desire to lend to food businesses, which I think will begin to happen, we've got to look at other options. And I think that's something that, there's got to be a structural change in the market where there are more options made available, or we will begin to stymie growth.
Such as?
I suppose food, a lot of founders really start almost with friends and family in terms of the beginnings of funding, informally. But moving on from that, you've got equity partners, you've got angel investment, you've got organisations which are doing really well for the Irish food industry, like Enterprise Ireland, and then you've got some of the growth funds, some of the funds that are out there through intermediaries that are put together specifically to invest in food and other sectors. And in many cases, it's a basket of all of those that startups need or that companies need to grow. It's not just one or the other. And I think the less that's available in one sector, impacts negatively on the whole sector.
Tom?
Agree. 99.9% of what Alison has just shared.
What was the 0.0 whatever it is that you didn't agree with?
No, it didn't. I think, definitely the world has changed with the banking sector in the Irish market over the last 4 to 6 weeks. We were very fortunate that Permanent TSB, who are looking to reposition themselves with SMEs to become a partner in the Irish market, over the next 12 to 18 months that their number one objective is to work with SMEs. I think both myself and Niall from history would give a lot of confidence to a bank based on our success historically, and maybe it will be a little bit different for a total startup to walk through the door. I do believe crowdfunding is a new way of maximising the opportunity to raise money. I think it's definitely becoming very attractive over the last 12 to 18 months, but there's quite a lot of work needs to go into that, and having the right professionals to pull that together.
It's not there really, is it? I mean, I know that there are probably 6 platforms that are there. It's still, even though they've been there some years, it's still at an infancy.
In the UK, it's definitely has taken off, especially with food and drinks businesses. In Ireland, I've only seen 2 or 3 companies availing of it over the last 6 to 8 months.
Why?
I think it gets you recognised.
But why is it only 3 that may have dipped their toes in?
I think it's purely down to, in the UK, EIS, it has been a lot easier to avail of. In Ireland, EIS is an absolute nightmare. And, there has been many funds that have businesses that have been approved for EIS, and then you come to the end of the tax year, and unfortunately, it doesn't fall in there. So there has been a lot of complexity around that. I do believe we are getting our heads around it. And I think there needs to be a shared, for them platforms, we need to be speaking to the UK and Ireland that Irish companies can avail of EIS and UK companies can avail of EIS.
I'd say now you might be waiting for that one.
I know.
Niall McGrath, where's your big pot of money?
Look, I just going back to some of Alison's points earlier on. I agree wholeheartedly with it. Our own experiences. I think we have to tell this story, Tom. Is like one of the 2 pillar banks, which is owned majority by us around this table and all the taxpayers in this country, who have
I wonder which one he's talking about.
Up saying things like, "Oh, brave or begin," or one of those ones, and they might have loans that they can give to startup companies where they're 80% guaranteed by the state. And we spoke to them with our background. We went to them with Cali Cali, and they said, "Yeah, come on in, we want it back." And then actually said, "No." We were taken aback, and we went, and thank God Permanent TSB stepped up to the plate. But they wanted us to actually underwrite the whole thing with personal guarantees, even though it was 80% state-backed. 100%, they wanted 100% PGs, which was just crazy. And if they're going to ask it off 2 guys who've already gone and set up a business,
and invested a massive 6-digit figure already into the business.
And if they're going to ask it, like, what are they doing to new startups? Guys who are coming out of left field who have actually got great ideas, maybe have great products, but they haven't even got the experience. So what chance have they got?
This podcast is about encouraging people to get into the business. So you better
so the great one, so Permanent TSB, fantastic. We've had really great success with Enterprise Ireland as well. They've been really great support to us all the way along. And then, you've had to use different ways, like friends and family, or else other investors have actually backed as well. Some smart money have come in as well.
One of the big problems, and Alison, I think that you kind of would be very well aware of this, is that Ireland, we don't have that big lump of wealth. You go into London, we walk down some streets, I'd say there's more wealth in some streets in London that there might be across Dublin.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's changing. I think there's a lot more people with cash to invest. The question is, where are they going to put it? They're not getting any return out of the banks at the moment in terms of interest rates. In fact, it's about to go the other way, and they're about to get charged for having cash in the bank. So I think there's a lot more appetite now for investment from individuals. Organizations like HBAN that bring together syndicates of people who are looking to invest as a group or as individuals, but mainly as a group. Where they will take an equity stake in the business, and as you said just earlier, it may or may not bring smarts with that, may bring an angel investment scenario, or just may bring cash. But either way, I think that's a very healthy side of the investment piece that particularly food startups should look to. the opportunity to bring in some expertise as well, which is really helpful at that beginning stage.
The so-called smart money.
Smart money and smart contacts and smart networks, and introduce you to people where you can actually, short circuit a lot of the difficult stuff at the beginning by getting the right introductions, and also, as I say, the expertise. One of the things that I've come across a lot is food startups, particularly, that want to own 100% of the business and don't want to give away any of it ever.
But is that not just ordinary startup naivety? And I bet you it's not just peculiar to the food industry, but just software.
Well, no, I would say it's actually a lot more the case in the food industry, because you look at the tech side of industry. There's no problem going at it, and in many cases, founders ending up with minority stakes, but with some element of control, and getting huge investment. And that's just the way it goes in that industry. And what that does is it drives scale, because instantly you have a pot of money that you can use to drive growth. In the food industry, a lot of people start off in a much more smaller scale because they love food. And that's a great way to start, because, we all love food, but, the passion that's there and the interest in food drives a lot of startups. I remember starting in the food industry, over 20 years ago, and I'd worked in other industries up till then. But food wasn't sexy. If you weren't in tech, you were nobody. Now, food is a really sexy industry to be involved in. I have people constantly looking for a cup of coffee. I want to get involved in the food industry. How do I go about it? How do any ideas, any tips, whatever? Which is great. The universities are. I usually say yes to most coffee. It depends on who. I think it's great to give back if you can, and
it's not one of the points, because I have mentioned it on other episodes of this series, is that the Love Irish Food Network is about that members are very happy to have a chat and encourage, and just as you're doing.
Yeah. So on the equity piece, I would always advise startups. Do you want to own 100% of a 200 grand turnover business,
or a nice piece of melon?
Yeah, exactly. Or do you want to own 70% or 60% of a €5 million business? And that's a hard question for a lot of people. But I think if you want to scale, you have to be happy to hand over some of your equity, because the benefits, I think, absolutely outweigh the negatives.
I don't even think there's an option, to be honest, Alison, without handing over some equity. So many people, as they say, ink or paper never refuses ink. You can write the best of business plans, and you can write, we're going to make X amount of million in year 3. But unfortunately, there's so many, and without being disrespectful, so many people are so naive that to understand, to trade within the retail sector, the cost of investment to get that product off the shelf. When you start building a real business plan, and then you see your numbers in year 1 with, and you're waiting for these couple of years to get to the black, then there's a realisation. I think, that's probably a massive gap that's in the Irish market, that people really need to take that step back to have something solid from past experience to build a business plan.
And tell me this, and I know that you're going to say, well, it depends, because that's the obvious answer to this, is if you were going to have a startup business in food, round figures, what kind of money are you talking about that you should have available to start up?
Genuinely, it's all dependent on the ambition of where you want to go. If you want to be in 100 stores, you can do that and, pay yourself whatever and drive around and play the little green jersey on your back. If you want to be in 1,000 stores, you need probably, in my eyes, realistically, €500,000 to get out of the traps in year 1. That you're able to
year one. Oh,
year
okay.
one,
Yep.
year 1, $500,000.
And that depends, though, whether you're manufacturing yourself or whether you're outsourcing.
Do you own the shiny machinery, or are you actually outsourcing that hassle to somebody else?
And that's probably, again, myself and Niall, our background is all about outsourcing the grief, as we call it. We like to create brands. We like to build that strategy. We like to bring it from concept to shelf. But from manufacturing, pass that over. We make our gross margin off that.
Did you sit down with the books and look at that when you were previous businesses, that you said, look, at the margin that I can make out of the manufacturing end of it just isn't worth the hassle?
No, our background was never in manufacturing, so we always looked at outsource that.
Like, I will be involved in another business called NutriQuick, which is it's a pre-made meal company. We're based in Blessington. The first time I got involved in the manufacturing world, it's taken me 2 years to get my head around understanding that business. And, we really went live with a contract in Aldi in 2019. And in 2021 is now we're only starting to see profitability coming from that business, but it's more around the efficiencies where if you outsource that grief, Alison's business knows where those efficiencies are. That's their area of expertise in manufacturing. To try and dual is it difficult.
And yet, Alison, you went with both sides because you are manufacturing and you are obviously selling as well.
Yeah, I mean, our model for the business when we looked to start it up was, firstly, it was scale. So we didn't want to be a small startup. We wanted to be a large startup, which is either naive or
ambitious.
or ambitious, or both. So we took over a very large brownfield site and built within that and converted the building to a world-class manufacturing facility. So we now play in both areas, really. We manufacture for retail, we manufacture for ourselves, and we also manufacture for other brands. So we've got three legs of the stool. I suppose for us, the brand and making our own product was, in one sense, to be a showcase for the rest of the business, to show that we could do it.
Okay, I was going to ask a question around that, which is, if you had to choose from your three babies, which one would you prefer?
Well, I think in our case, they all work well from each other because we need scale for the size of the facility, of the bakehouse. But we also use our brand to develop new concepts, to work with, obviously, to get to know customers, to get to know what they want. And to be in touch with the market. And I think for us, that works really well. It may not work well for other avenues, but I think, even if you are just simply a manufacturer, you need to understand the market. And that's where the discipline of owning a brand and running a brand helps you with all of that.
You should explain the size of the operation because not everybody will know of you. They should, but it is big.
It is. We have a very large bakehouse up in Drogheda. The oven alone is 80 metres long, so you certainly get your steps in, walking up and down that with your Fitbit on, and there's no problem getting to your 10,000 steps in a day. Really, it's, and I say to everybody who walks into the bakehouse, and the first question is always, wow, because it's so big. You guys have been there, you've seen it. But really, the reality is we do exactly what you would do at home, out in your kitchen counter with your Kenwood or your mixer or whatever. We just do it on a larger scale.
Much larger scale, I presume.
Much larger. So
how many bickies an hour or whatever are you producing?
We would be in a position to, on an 8-hour shift, to produce about 35,000 packs. Yeah,
packs.
Yeah.
Times so 6, so a lot of biscuits.
A lot of biscuits, yeah. But, with scale, I suppose for us, it's still about the food. It's not about churning it out. It's making sure the ingredients are absolutely bang on. We use Irish butter for our brand. We use the best ingredients we can get our hands on, and we really believe we make good biscuits. And that's ultimately what it's about.
They are very nice.
Well, I brought some along. You can munch on them afterwards.
Even before this, actually, I have met you before, and I did tell you nice things about the bickies, and I was even able to tell you where I found them, and etc. So no, they are absolutely gorgeous.
You are listening to the Love Irish Food podcast. For more information, visit www.loveirishfood.ie.
Back to the ingredients, because it is important about the sourcing of the product. Obviously, you're all trying to do as much at home here in Ireland. I've asked this question on other podcasts as to how much recognition do you think that your consumers are giving that you have gone to the bother of sourcing some, maybe not all, but some of your product in Ireland?
I think it's changing. Certainly, Love Irish Food is all about Irish brands who are supporting Irish, the Irish market, Irish communities. I've really noticed a huge change in the last year with COVID. The sense of community, the sense of people believing and actually beginning to join the dots and figuring out, if I buy from that company, I'm supporting jobs locally. It's almost going back to this kind of recessionary feel of the need to support local. We did a podcast actually an event with Jim Power, who is very well known to Love Irish Food and a great supporter, and he's on the board. But he always comes up with great quotes. But his quote on that particular event was something that he'd seen in the front of a local shop on his daily walk, and it was buy local or buy local. And I just thought that was inspired. It says it all, buy local, because it won't be there unless you really give the support. So I think consumers are really getting that message now. We've seen the huge difference now in the suburbanization of food purchases in the last year, as local coffee shops and local shops are beginning to thrive. maybe not so many chains. Let's see what happens as they all emerge from COVID. But I think that is starting to, cooking from scratch, buying local ingredients. It's all more the data will show us.
The trend has stayed now. We're 400 days into COVID, as it was said this morning. No, it was I seen a quote from Noel Anderson this morning. Who was one of the guys that had the case against FBD from the bridge, 400 days today. But for our business, I mean, when you're in startup and you've got a very, very clear roadmap, critical path, and you're 6 months in and overnight, your heart and vein strategy is just pulled from underneath you with, where we would class our Dublin city centre or city centres as our high footfall. That's the heart where you get your brand recognised, you overinvest, really strong point of sale, and then our veins will be the forecourts. And unfortunately for us, just overnight that was pulled. So, we had to take a big, deep breath, and I suppose from there we had to fish where the fish were going. And what we found, people were shopping within butchers, fruit and veg, and we repositioned our brand within that channel from around May of last year, and that continues to thrive for us now. And I would speak genuinely weekly to some key, and they're still seeing the same numbers as what they were seeing on Christmas Eve in 2019 on a Saturday. People queuing around, and they're willing to pay money now because, as Alison said, when you're cooking from scratch at home, you're rediscovering that, do you know what, can make some really cool food at home, not too difficult, and I'm going to spend that extra few quid on good meat, but it's got to be Irish, good chicken with the likes of Manor Farm to
And your use, when I say your Cali Cali's use of Donald Skean, was that strategic? I know he's a brilliant cook. Yeah. Of course he is, so he's going to have brilliant recipes. Yeah. But was that to kind of really Irishize it or Irishify it?
To be honest, it was. I'll let you talk on this one.
Because he was living in California. So it was really, we were travelling out there to get inspired about what food and
right excuse to tell the wife we were going out to do some market research.
So we went out to California, spent 3 weeks traveling around, met Donald over there. He was living there at the time. Obviously he's got amazing food credentials, huge social media presence as well. So it all just made sense. So he was very, very involved in the flavors, because ours is flavor first and then great benefits as well on top. So we saw an opportunity to bring two mega trends together. One was foods of the world, which was happening and actually really kind of came to the fore over in California with street food and with street kind of food truck coming from
to that as well, Niall, with the whole movement now. What you're seeing with food trucks, I mean, a lot of these really cool chefs that were furloughed set up in without planning permission in Walkerstown roundabout, and I mean, some of these guys have now followings on social media that's genuinely bigger than some of the biggest restaurants in Dublin. Yeah. People are breaking the 5K rules to go to these places.
We don't talk about that.
So what we saw was that food truck thing, which came from California, and then you had the fitness and kind of healthy eating trend, which also came from California. Those two things came together. We went out there, met Donald Skean, we're driving around, heard Biggie Smalls singing about going back to Cali Cali, and that was it. We banged in the trademark for that, and that's how the whole thing came together.
And now your aim is to become a world brand.
Absolutely, yeah. So we've begun shipping now. We've just tied up with Boyne Valley over the last 6 months. It's been fantastic bedding in process.
And what form has that taken?
They're now taking a big stake in the business, and now we're shipping out. As of this week, we're shipping out. We're in UAE. We've shipped out to Singapore. We're shipping out to the US. Australia, and then we're in talks for Germany, Benelux, and then we're just taking our tentative steps in the UK as well.
Now, I'm not allowed to ask this question on a Love Irish Food podcast, but how much of the Irish credentials are you selling when you're going abroad like that? The branding is Cali Cali, California. Mm-hmm. So where does Ireland sit in that?
Well, look, food credentials from Ireland are global. So when we're speaking to distributors, we're telling them, listen, we're using
we work with Kerry Ingredients, we work with Glanbia, we're working with some of the biggest flavour houses, and we're very fortunate that these guys took a punt on us. You know, that credibility of having Kerry on one side, having Glanbia, and then speaking, you don't even have to talk about Irish. Once you talk about them two brands, they're
and then big Irish manufacturers as well, making our products as well. So all of those things there. So while the brand to the consumer facing is all about Cali Cali and California street food trends and healthy eating and living, the actual underlying message that we're selling behind the scenes to the distributors and their customers, the big retailers, is that the food credentials are absolutely second to none.
But even some of the research that we've done, because we work with Fallon, who are fantastic with our sauces. One of the probably one of the best manufacturers we've ever worked with. And
they're in Cork.
In Cork, yeah. Now, when they say, we're in Cork and you put it into your Google Maps, you think you're going for 2 hours. When you get to Cork, it's another 2 hours on again. But
you can just about make out New York.
You can see, absolutely. On a good day, you can see New York. But we worked with some point of sale in the Cork region in with our sauces and made in Cork, and spikes that we've seen was just unbelievable in Dunn stores, and it was all around the operation transformation, and they created point of sale because the product fits in with the calorie content and whatever else. So you can definitely see from point of sale in the Irish market, when you demonstrate and you're calling out Irish, it works. Now, Cork people, definitely stick with Cork people. If we put it made in Dublin, I don't think we would have seen those uplifts,
Of course.
Drogheda sells well across the country. Everybody's happy with the product from Drogheda.
Kind of a final question to you all. Alison, would you tell people to get into Irish food manufacturing themselves, either food or drink, or just say, no, there's too many problems? We've talked about lack of funding.
Yeah, I think the food industry is, the future for the food industry is absolutely vibrant. The innovation, the level of innovation that's out there, people are now really considered about what they buy in food. They go out and they fill the trolley, but I'd say they're spending a lot more time thinking about what they're eating. And I think that really bodes well for anybody thinking of coming into the food industry with a new product, with a new idea, with something that they think is going to be suited to our new lifestyle. And I think the real challenge is to try and figure out what our new lifestyle is going to be, post-COVID, all of that.
That's a big question.
That's a big question. Yeah. And I think anybody with ideas that they feel that they can sit in with that they can predict what it's going to be like and have a product to match, you absolutely go for it. Yes, you will find funding. You might need to bootstrap it at the beginning. But as I said earlier, food is sexy as an investment. It's really coming into its own, and I would encourage anybody to put their business plan together. Be realistic. Ask for more than you think you need, because you will need more than you think you need.
It'll take twice as long and it'll cost twice as much. That's a guarantee.
But you love what you do, and that's something that's hugely important.
So would the two of you go, Niall, Tom, into the food business, if you weren't buried in it already?
100%. 100%. It's probably the most exciting industry to work in. They don't call it FMCG for nothing, and it's my 25 years of working with some really cool brands in the Irish market. It's always been fast. And, once you have the mentality to keep up with that, take the knocks. Again, reiterate what Alison says is if you're going on your own 2 feet out, try and find a mentor to really help you shape a business plan. Spend that time, spend some money on research before you go 2 feet in. But it's, for anybody out there, absolutely, it's a fantastic industry to be in.
I'm putting the noose around all three necks now. Are you three all being part of the Love Irish Food programme or organisation? Are you willing to mentor people? Alison?
Yes, absolutely. And I mentioned earlier, I do regularly. I mean, I don't know whether they get any benefit out of it, but
they must do.
I think ultimately, when you're starting a business, you're like a sponge. You're just absorbing as much as you can. Some of it's relevant, some of it's not. But you need to get out and talk about it, because it's not on a page. They don't teach. It doesn't. You can't teach it in a book. You got to get out and talk. And Ireland is great for that. People do, and they do give time to other people. I think that's why we've got a successful food industry, because people talk to each other.
We give back regularly, both to people who are starting out, but also we go back to universities as well.
Trinity College on first time I was waiting for my degree to be posted alongside it, but we got an entrepreneurship award from Trinity. So
good, that's well done. I love that.
We do a lot with UCD Marketing Development Program as well. We do a lot with Damien McLaughlin in there.
I know Damien, lovely man.
Yeah, it's great. No, so we do try and give back, and
at certain times, but especially for ourselves, going through the integration with Boyne Valley and making that as seamless as possible. It does swallow a lot of time to try and continue to run a business, find some family life and this happening in there. And then sometimes you get all these messages on LinkedIn and you're going, oh my God, I need to get back to. And I think it's really just figuring out, even if it's one person every 6 weeks, that you give an hour to.
People helped us out when we were on our way up, so it's important.
We were so fortunate, that anyone we reached out to in the first 12 months, we set one meeting up per month with really good entrepreneurs in Ireland, and every one of them.
I've been around this industry and other industries for a while now, and I have to say, I love the way that business people will back you and have a chat. Probably nosiness to find out what your business is about, but they still do give advice. I love it. Listen, that is all the time we have on the Love Irish Food Green Ireland podcast series, episode 3. My thanks to Alison Cowzer, Tom Gannon and Niall McGrath. Do listen to all of the others that will be and are being and have been posted, and you will, I hope, learn more about the Irish food industry and how wonderful and important it is to everybody. Thanks all.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
The Love Irish Food podcast. Love Irish Food, helping Irish shoppers make informed choices about buying local Irish food and